They say that success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. And by no stretch of the imagination could the Supermarionation shows be labelled a failure. Okay, well, every empire has to have its final days, and an empire is exactly what AP Films, later Century 21, had become. Merchandise lined the streets of not just Britain, but the world. And behind this merchandise was a phenomenal run of filmmaking creativity, the sort that is unimaginable in the world we now live. Hit after hit came out year after year. So rapid was the chain of success that the company itself had often long moved on to its next production before the viewing public had even seen its last. In the spring of 1963, Barry Gray was writing his music timing notes for the last of Fireball XL5. A year later, the studio would be on to Thunderbirds. And what of Stingray in the middle? Well, that was made in between the two, but only came into the homes of the great British public in October 1964, by which time shooting was well underway on the first handful of Thunderbirds episodes. But who was the most important to these successes? Well, obviously the producers. Jerry and Sylvia Anderson were coming up with the ideas. Reg Hill and John Reed, meanwhile, had effectively invented Supermarionation. But Supermarionation is puppets. Well, clearly then, Mary Turner and Christine Glanville were the most important. Show after show of striking heroes and villains brought to life elegantly for the cameras. The directors. It was their sense of cinema that gave it that timeless quality. But what about Derek Meddings? Yes, obviously, it must be the special effects. Where would it all be without the explosions, secret bases and aircraft taking off? Yes, the sound.
You all set, Jean?
Yes, all set.
Right, okay, this is the basic track then for the derrick breaking up. Take it on Ampex 1, yes?
Stand by for cue.
Right, standing by.
Cue.
Like the picture editing, sound is an overlooked aspect of the success of the shows, even though without it, there could have been no great success. The sound effects, the voices,
You must be nuts, amigo.
the music,
1, 2.
all essential to bring these artificial worlds to life.
I'll go get my spacesuit. Look at that!
Now, the importance of sound isn't unique to Supermarionation, obviously, but perhaps it is actually slightly more important to these shows because it imbues the unreal images with a sense of, well, reality. And so this week, we'll be looking at the sound of Supermarionation, including extracts from studio quarter-inch tapes that have surfaced over the last couple of months, having been missing for 6 decades.
SFX 310.
This is the true sound of Supermarionation. Solenoids clacking away. The sound of metal on metal, underpinning the dramatic voices echoing through a warehouse. Unlike normal films, there are no sound rushes. All that comes back the following day are silent pictures. The only pre-existing sound, which predates the pictures, is the dialogue track recorded by the voice artists. This tape is prepared before filming. All the pauses and general chatter removed.
There ain't nothing Pedro wouldn't do for money, except work, of course.
Now take it easy, Dusty. What are you trying to say?
Sorry, the page is wrong. Yeah. Well, if we're going to press on, Tex, I suggest we keep our eyes open. You just can't be too careful these days, you know?
And this is then supplied to the director to make his film with. Then, when the editor gets the pictures and the dialogue track, with the aid of a marked-up script, his first job is to sync the rushes. This will be the raw material he'll work with for the next few weeks. Unlike the modern day, where editors and directors like to cut pictures to music, in the 60s it was the other way round. The picture drove the sound. Within a couple of weeks, or longer in the case of Thunderbirds, the picture would be basically complete.
Base from Thunderbird 2, at danger zone. About to release pod.
FAB, Virgil.
So now over to the sound and music editors. It would be their job to fit the sound effects and music to the film. But to do this, someone had to record them first. Now, music was the exclusive product of the mind of composer Barry Gray.
That's a bugger to get that, I'm not kidding.
It's a What did you say, Barry?
Well, almost exclusive. Supercar Series 1 made extensive use of library tracks by Edwin Astley. But other than that, it was all Barry Gray. The sound effects, though, were different. They were the product of a variety of creative minds. Unlike the special effects, which developed over the years, sound was important from day one, because Jerry Anderson himself had been a respected sound editor.
Right, Mitch in Beaker's laboratory. Coming up now.
The sound effects came from a variety of sources, some bespoke for the shows, some pre-existing. These effects were recorded by John and Jean Taylor of Holick and Taylor.
Run, Jean. Effects 4, dialing tone.
AP Films itself, or rather its sister company, Sound Effects Limited, run by Jerry Anderson and David Elliott.
AP Films, Effects 86.
Outside companies.
They're running. NPL 19, take 1, wind tunnel start.
And for special electronic effects, Barry Gray stepped in with a variety of weird and wonderful ethereal sounds.
80 feet electro music for brain thoughts on screen.
When Jerry and I started the sound effects company, we were involved with a sound recordist called Peter Hanford, who had recorded lots and lots of steam engines. He was a steam engine fanatic, as well as being a brilliant sound recordist. When we told him we were starting the sound effects company, he asked if he could join in and he would put all of his sound effects in.
Peter Hanford, who introduced me to Jerry Anderson, had a lot of film which was taken during the war, and it was all inflammable film, and it was all sounds, genuine war sounds taken in the trenches, incredible stuff, thousands of feet, and I had to transfer it all, and then of course it had to be destroyed because it was very inflammable.
I think we used some of those.
Did use some of
those
yeah.
explosions.
Also, he recorded sound effects for us. If a dubbing editor from a feature film came along and said, "I want a car engine starting up," we didn't just do the engine starting, we did every possible thing we could think of on the car, like door slams, door openings.
Open. Shut.
The boot opening and the boot closing. Opening the bonnet and the sunroof, all that sort of thing. We soon became known throughout the business for doing this sort of thing, and the dubbing editors would all come along and say, right, well, we want this and we want that, and we would supply the effects. In those days it used to be 5 shillings a foot. And then we became involved with a sound recordist from Birmingham called John Taylor.
Although we were contracted to do all the transfer from quarter tapes that we provided and make up an awful lot of sound effects.
OFX 315, tapping glass with stick.
OFX 122, mine cable being cut through.
OFX 61.
These effects have become timeless and found a life beyond in a variety of films and shows. But perhaps they are now so memorable because they are so distinctively not of the future, but of the past.
OFX 172.
In the age in which we live, where a one-ton car can silently flatten you at the nearest Pelican crossing, the idea that absolutely everything mechanical in the past made such a racket is both amusing and appealing. But to the Supermarionation shows, thumps and clunks and whirs gave light objects weight. It gave them gravitas. For years, the raw recording of most of these effects were missing. A few tapes survived in Barry Gray's archives, but these were principally his own sound effects recordings. Plus a tape of a day at Little Rissington Airfield with John Taylor, who was recording various aircraft sounds for Thunderbirds.
Vulcan flyover.
I remember going down to Little Rissington to record it with the Red Hours there, and we had a friend with a plane, and we went down and we recorded there. Used a lot of the jet set, but also they had a starting machine, and we used that. I think that was used probably as much as the jets.
This is sound inside an Anson while it's taxiing for takeoff.
Since December 2024, an extraordinary 20 reels have appeared with both sound effects and dialogue. These came from two sources. The sound effects appeared on eBay from an unknown individual, and former editor Gordon Davies' collection. Davie had been an editor during the early years of AP Films, and had received some tapes when the company looked like it was going to collapse in 1960. There was only one issue. 19 of the 20 tapes had been reused. Admittedly, the unreused tape was home to Sylvia Anderson's, or as she was known then, Sylvia Tam's, first dialogue recording, so it wasn't a total washout.
At the start of the series, we had recorded the scripts, and then Jerry was not happy with the voice for Jimmy, and he telephoned to ask if we had studio time because Sylvia was going to record the voice. And so she came to Birmingham to do the recording. First time she'd ever done anything like that, so she was very nervous, but made an excellent job of it.
Oh, gee, thanks. Hey, I almost forgot. Where's Mitch?
Just try the gee, thanks, without me.
Gee, thanks. Gee, I sure am glad to hear that. Can I see him?
Yeah, a little more relief rather than excitement in that first line.
Gee, I sure am glad to hear that. Can I see him? Once more?
And from then on, she went to do all the other voices, female voices, in the scripts, and all voices in all the other series.
But for the remaining 14 sound effects tapes, the majority of the effects were mixed in with 1970s pop recordings. For Feather Falls, the situation was even worse. A 1-minute extract that survived, then vanished, being replaced with a recording of the score for the film Exodus.
We got a customer. You see how...
Fortunately, in the case of the sound effects, which were originally recorded for Supercar and Fireball XL5, albeit used all the way through to UFO, it soon became clear that everything would be salvageable. The original recordings had been made full track in the 1960s. However, in the 1970s, the new owner of the tapes had recorded pop music quarter track. This fortunately erased only 2 quarters of the track though, tracks 1 and 3, and left the other 2 quarters, tracks 2 and 4, intact. Given all the tapes were like this, it throws up the possibility that whoever had the tapes wanted to preserve the effects, and so didn't use the reverse side. We passed these tapes on to Mark Ayres, well known for his archive television restoration work, and the sound editor on Thunderbirds The Anniversary episodes, and he successfully transferred the recordings for us. Four Feather Falls was a slightly different story. There the intention had been to erase the original recordings entirely, and it is only down to pure luck that a quirk of recording design technology ensured their survival. Like the sound effects, these too had been recorded full track. However, when they were reused, they were recorded on by a half-track machine. This split the tape into 2 mono tracks, so you could have double the length of recording. However, in order to stop bleed-through between the 2 tracks, the designers decided to leave a band of tape in the middle. If the tape was brand new, then that would mean there'd be just unused tape between the 2 tracks. However, when the tape had been previously used, it meant that the original recording was untouched. The erase head didn't remove it, and the playback head didn't play it. So these Four Feather Falls recordings went through major productions such as The Young Ones and The Big Country, with Tex Tucker keeping law and order unnoticed in between.
Just like me when I was young.
Why, Grandpa, I never knowed that you could sing.
Once we realised that certain BASF branded tapes might have originally been home to dialogue recordings, we investigated all of them, examining the middle of the tape only. The result was 6 complete or partially complete dialogue track recordings, including part of an unedited voiceover session.
Where did he go? Dusty?
11.
Is it? Page 11?
Yeah, top of 11.
Okay, got it. It's quite obvious to me the Doctor's been tricked by Pedro and some of his friends.
Now salvaged, these recordings give us a unique insight, never possible before, into the sound of Supermarionation and how it was achieved.
Boiling lava, in brackets boiling porridge.
And these sounds span the mundane to the extraordinary.
SFX 166, crazy cash register effect.
The ordinary.
Roulette wheel.
To the downright bizarre.
SFX 182, various ejector seat effects for Supercar.
Such was the variety of scenarios and stories that the demands were seemingly limitless. Many of these sound effects were then cut to time with the picture.
Base from Thunderbird 2, at danger zone. About to release pod. Base from Thunderbird 2, at danger zone. About to release pod.
However, often effects were not just used independently, but layered together. Let's have a look at the Supercar launch procedure. First, the individual sounds. And now, how they come together bit by bit to build the complete environment.
Right, Gene. Okay, we'll go ahead. Stingray injector tubes. You standing by?
Stand by.
SFX 502, Stingray injector tubes.
Normally, the film editor would ring and say, the scene is Supercar is coming in to land and the engines are roaring and it runs for 10 seconds and then it goes onto the ground, and I'd be busy making notes and then put the phone down and think, and how are we going to do all that?
I remember one instance they wanted Supercar to be gliding with no engines, and I remember thinking, and eventually I got up close to the mic and I took a deep breath and took a very low and changed the speed and the EQ.
Oh, there was the stopping of a train or something with magnetic grabs. That was the description, yes. The train is roaring down and Supercar has, then the grabs comes down and doesn't quite, and then it comes down and you think, well, how are we going to make that sound?
Right, down we go.
We did have some electromagnets. We had a lot of things around in those days, and I expect what we did, we had a piece of steel and put a battery or a voltage across it so that eventually the piece of steel smacked up against a magnet. Well, for the sound of Supercar's engines, we had an Acme editing turntable which had quite a lot of motors on it, at least 3. And by using these motors at various speeds, and then again changing the speed of them afterwards, and maybe sometimes putting them on several tracks, we did in fact achieve getting the sound we wanted for the engines.
Sounds like something from another world.
But usually you have to halve the speed, and of course in those days it was all 1/4-inch tape. Now it would all be easy on computer and
when
digital.
We had multi-track, we
easier.
Eventually would sometimes stack it up on multi-track. Then we'd change the speed and then we'd mix the tracks that we'd done together. We started on 3 on old Ampex, and we then went to 8 on Studer, and then we went to 16. But by doing that, we could do all these tracks, and that was a great help. But John Peverell rang me one day and he said, there's this shot, and this must have been Stingray again, but all the shellfish and things are clinging onto it. Oh, what a job that was, trying to put things and lots of tracks, mixing them down and putting lots more tracks together.
Sometimes very hair-raising and sometimes very funny. Master Spy and his assistant,
I remember that very well,
were down either in the cave or a cellar or somewhere. So we had a cellar at the studio, so put the mic down there. Then, of course, have to set the machine going, go down the cellar, and there is John in front, Master Spy, heavy footsteps, me tripping behind. And after a moment or two, you get the giggles, and that is it. You cannot carry on anymore.
SFX 128, Master Spy and Zara footsteps.
Fighting in a cardboard box?
Fighting in a cardboard box, yes.
I don't know why we were fighting in a cardboard box, but we were.
SFX 185.
We had a creaking door in the office, which we never oiled, because we often used to use this. I do remember a ship on one occasion, a sailing ship, and by using this and changing the speed, we got the most wonderful effect of the boom of a sailing ship going. I know we did use, on occasion, sparklers, and we did, in fact, fire the sparkler. And then, again, we would increase or decrease the speed or use 2.
SFX2, take 1, Catherine will.
We kept the library of sound effects, and I'm afraid over the years several of the effects would appear over and over again when you'd say, ah, I remember. And yes, I'm afraid engines did begin to sound the same. But then a jet is a jet, and they all sound the same.
Beyond the sound of physical objects being manipulated on tape to produce the otherworldly and unreal, Barry Gray also made use of instruments such as the en maintenant and mellotron. These effects, in comparison to the sounds of humming and whirring motors, were interesting because they had a musicality.
Long length of TB3 radio beam effect. Electronic rundown for Peter and John.
Can I hear the tape once more, Tintin?
Coming up, Brains.
Wild track radio sounds.
Although not all effects were achieved with such ingenuity. For instance, when the sound of Big Ben was needed, well, why travel there when the sound is being brought to you live by the BBC?
This is the BBC Home Service. Here's the news read by Michael de Morgan.
Sound effects weren't just limited to the sounds of machines and other inanimate objects, though. Often background dialogue was also needed, and this would fall either to the actors...
Joan, you've got the script, have you?
Yes, indeed I have.
And have you read it?
I have. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
Oh, good. That's absolutely fine, because everyone else is lined up in the cast. We want you to do the part.
Oh, that's magnificent. I can't wait to see you and discuss it.
Or to any frustrated technician or creative looking to exercise their dramatic skills.
Running.
I'll do a deep voice first.
Running.
Right, reporters take one. Let's have a picture over here, phones. Thank you. One here. Okay, lovely, hold it.
Or failing that, any bloke doing adverts, but in reverse.
Perfect. 203.
Local press advertising will be the dealer's responsibility. A complete range of blocks and editorial matter will be available, however. Considerable progress has also been made lately with interesting and constructional meetings to a wide variety of women's organisations.
Once all of these effects had been assembled, it was the job of the sound editors to match it to the pictures. The dialogue editor, the sound editor, and the music editor, each taking care of their respective part.
I've been hit!
Nose up, Scott. Nose up.
For the sound and music editors, this in itself was a particular art. Knowing where to bring the music in to underscore the appropriate moments, and choosing not just the right sound effects, but blending them in with other sound elements to create a convincing landscape, whilst being easy to understand by the audience who were listening on fairly limited speakers. Technology all round was limited, but limited does not necessarily mean inferior. In the 60s, the mixer had a restricted number of audio tracks. And that limitation had certain benefits, because it meant the editors had to make choices. Choices that often reflected the way the human ear processes sound. That's to say that just as the human ear prioritises the dominant sounds, think in a restaurant where your ear hears the person you're talking to over the table next to you, well, unless your companion is very boring, the Supermarionation shows prioritise dominant and important sounds. So, for instance, here in Jungle Hazard...
Satisfactory. Most satisfactory.
The two main sounds are the dialogue and the sound of the jungle. Footsteps and other minor noises are omitted. But when Supercar arrives later in the episode, as the engines come in, the background sound of nature fades away.
Horatio!
Felicity!
Well, don't just stand there doing a Stanley and Livingston act. Get me out of this.
Of course, old girl. Beaker to pilot. That high tensile wire coil on the back seat.
And so the editors were very selective. Next time you watch an episode, notice how many scenes are in fact just dialogue.
Top secret. Subject: international rescue. Our equipment is way ahead of its time. In the wrong hands, it could be utilized to destroy life. Go ahead, John.
We have our first emergency call, Father.
The same selectiveness was also applied to the music. Barry Gray would view each episode when the picture edit had been completed. He would write out the action in detail, and he would use this either to write new music or to produce edits of pre-existing tracks. This was often a collaborative effort between Gray and the sound editor, as we can hear in this note for Shadow of Fear.
1M1A, George, this is really just to cover the space bits in this section, and it goes up to the explosion at about 51 feet. It can be taken out at the dab. When we go inside to the operators, John's effects will take over.
30 seconds.
They must have spotted it. What's the flight profile look like?
Right on target. 21,000.
Gray was also careful not to overload the shows with his music. Unlike today, where eager composers write seemingly 40-minute scores for 20-minute shows, whose producers are terrified of silence, Gray was never afraid to let his music only lift where it was needed on moments of drama and transitions.
1-0.
Even if he had written and recorded a score, he and the editors recognised the equal narrative power of the sound effects. For the climax of Trapped in the Sky, most of Gray's dramatic fire flash landing score goes unused. It tops and tails the action, but most of the drama is left to the actors and to the dramatic sounds of engines screaming and tyres exploding.
We're not gonna make it. We're running out of runway.
Every element choreographed to work together, rather than each individual person prioritising their particular element. It was, as always at AP Films, teamwork. And that teamwork was cemented by the mixer, who, in true Thunderbird style, had to get it right the first time. Whereas now you can endlessly tweak individual elements, back then the sound editor would have to do the final mix of each reel, approximately 8-minute chunks, live. So after a couple of rehearsals, and maybe a couple of drinks, the fingers were poised on the faders to bring all the sounds together as one, in real time.
Well, how about taking a look at what Professor Maddox's up to?
And that precision and care paid off, with soundtracks that were simple, dynamic, elegant, feature film standard. Any up-and-coming mixer today would do well to study these films to understand how a great soundtrack should seek to enhance rather than overpower the pictures to which it's matched. And to round things off, let's leave on some of those wonderful analog sound effects of the 21st century.